Mussolini in 22 minutes. If you're intrigued by the journeys of historical figures, buckle up. Today, we dive into the tumultuous life of Benito Mussolini, Italy's controversial leader. But before we delve in, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more captivating historical tales. Let's unravel the mysteries of Mussolini's early life. Born on July 29, 1883, in the Italian town of Predappio, Benito Mussolini was destined for an unusual life. His mother Rosa, a dedicated Catholic schoolteacher, ensured the family lived comfortably inside the school building. In stark contrast, his father, Alessandro, a fervent socialist blacksmith, was more of a rogue, often prioritizing his whims over the family. The young Mussolini's name itself paid homage to the leftist Mexican president Benito Juarez, a reflection of his father's political inclinations. Young Mussolini's journey wasn't without its fair share of struggles. His parents were once haunted by the fear that he might be mute, but Mussolini went on to defy expectations, emerging not just as a speaker, but as a force to be reckoned with. Yet it wasn't always rosy. Despite being the son of a teacher, he was notorious as a childhood bully, even causing commotion during church services. This rebellious streak only intensified, leading to his expulsion from a Catholic boarding school for attacking a fellow student. Trying his hand at teaching after acquiring a diploma, Mussolini soon realized it wasn't his cup of tea. Instead, he took a detour, exploring nightlife and even fleeing to Switzerland to escape military conscription. There, in the alleys of Lausanne, his fiery speeches lit up socialist meetings, making him a dominant figure among the far left. However, his aggressive nature didn't desert him. It became a tool to subdue those who disagreed. Shifting gears, Mussolini ventured into journalism. Working with the Future of the Workers, an immigrant-run socialist newspaper, he utilized the platform to unleash his political ideas and critiques. Arrested by Swiss authorities for his radical stance, Mussolini's opposition to religion and military conscription were crystal clear. A brief return to teaching upon his return to Italy in 1904 was short-lived. By 1909, he was deeply entrenched in extreme left-wing politics. Milan became his new playground, where he also found love in Rachele Guidi, a fellow Predappio native. Together, they would have 5 children, tying the knot in both civil and religious ceremonies. But Mussolini's true love was perhaps the printed word. Recognizing its power, he launched La Lotta di Classe, his own newspaper, and later took the reins of Italy's leading socialist paper, Avanti. Under his leadership, its readership skyrocketed. Even as World War I loomed large, Mussolini made his views on militarism and nationalism heard, marking the beginning of his complex and controversial political journey. Benito Mussolini, once a staunch socialist, took a significant turn in his life when he began to support Italy's participation in the conflict during World War I. Abandoning his position at the socialist paper Avanti, he was ousted from the Italian Socialist Party. Mussolini's evolving nationalist sentiments led him to establish the newspaper Il Popolo d'Italia. This newspaper, backed by influential Italian arms manufacturers and the French government, became his pulpit for voicing burgeoning nationalistic views. Although a prominent figure, Mussolini was drafted into the Italian army during the First World War. His time at the front lines, much like Adolf Hitler's, amplified his nationalistic fervor. When he returned, Italy was in turmoil, unemployment was rampant, and political unrest brewed. Mussolini seized this opportunity. He capitalized on the country's political polarization and portrayed himself as the resolute leader Italy desperately needed. The formation of the Revolutionary Fascist Party under Mussolini brought together discontented socialists and former soldiers, united against the rising tide of communism. Mussolini's black-shirted followers resorted to violence to squash any opposition. Under his leadership, fascism, named after the ancient Roman symbol fasci, flourished. Mussolini's charismatic speeches and journalistic propaganda captivated the masses. By the 1920s, the fascists had grown in strength and influence. Italy, being a staunchly Roman Catholic nation, saw its establishment lean towards the right, fearing a possible communist revolution. Mussolini's momentum peaked when the fascists claimed 35 seats in the 1921 Italian parliament elections. Mussolini, ever the strategist, rebranded the movement as the National Fascist Party. As the 1920s progressed, Mussolini's threats against the government grew more overt, culminating in a standoff during the 1922 general strike. In 1922, Benito Mussolini announced to a massive crowd in Naples that either the government would be handed to the fascists or they would seize it by marching on Rome. This statement was met with fervent support. The fascist march towards the capital began on October 28th, prompting the Italian government to consider declaring a state of siege. However, King Victor Emmanuel III, likely fearing the overthrow of the monarchy, declined this request and instead invited Mussolini to form a cabinet. Mussolini's triumphant arrival in Rome was marked by a parade of his black shirts, and by October 31st, he was officially the Prime Minister of Italy. Although he termed his rise to power as a conquest, Mussolini was still under the monarchy and part of a coalition government. This coalition was diverse, with many moderate liberals. Italy initially welcomed Mussolini's rule, yearning for an end to ongoing strikes and unemployment, which he pledged to resolve. Nevertheless, the subsequent erosion of Italian democracy to form a fascist police state became evident. A significant blot on Mussolini's reign was the 1924 abduction and killing of Socialist Party deputy Giacomo Matteotti, a crime believed to have been sanctioned by Mussolini himself. In economic terms, Mussolini's early years in power, under Finance Minister Alberto De Stefani, saw free trade, tax reforms, and resultant economic growth. A popular saying even credited Mussolini with making the trains run on time, though this was more a result of prioritizing main train lines and deploying fascist guards. However, after devaluing the lira in 1925 and dismissing De Stefani, Mussolini began exerting more control over the economy. His increasing dominance was arguably facilitated by the fascists' victory in the possibly rigged 1924 general election. Upon Mussolini's significant gain of support within the Italian parliament, he swiftly passed the Christmas Eve law on December 24, 1925. This act effectively put Mussolini directly under the king's authority, stripping the parliament of any governance power. With this newfound authority, Mussolini solidified his grip, suppressing all political opposition. Henceforth, one had to be a member of the fascist party to serve in any government or civil service role. From 1925, he adopted the title of Il Duce, or the leader of fascism. Though internationally, he was still largely recognized as the Italian Prime Minister. Surprisingly, while Mussolini is famed for pioneering fascism, he spent a significant portion of his younger years as a staunch advocate for Karl Marx's socialist ideals. Consequently, fascism can be viewed as either an offshoot or a response to socialism, differing mainly in its nationalistic fervor. Both Italy under Mussolini and Germany under National Socialism embedded socialist principles within their governance structures. Essentially, the state dictated the proceedings within the country. Nevertheless, unlike the Soviet Union's absolute state control, both these nations practiced a monitored form of capitalism. By 1934, Mussolini's administration had pervasive influence over the Italian economy. He proclaimed that the state owned 3/4 of Italy's economic ventures, making Italy a close second to the Soviet Union in nationalization. This dominance even extended to determining the crops cultivated on Italian farms, causing unpredictable surpluses and shortages. The Great Depression of the 1930s exacerbated Italy's economic fragility. The subsequent downfall of the banking system intensified the state's hold on the economy. Although some attribute this to Mussolini's socialist leanings, critics argue it was merely a tactic to augment his autocratic rule. However, this grasp was somewhat superficial. The state's rescues were funded through massive foreign loans, skyrocketing Italy's national debt. In 1922, when the fascists came to power, Italy's national debt was approximately 93 billion lira. By 1943, during World War II, this number had surged to an astounding 405 billion. With nearly half of the Italians laboring in low-wage agricultural jobs in the 1930s and a mere 4% in heavy industry, Mussolini faced the challenge of transforming Italy into an industrialized nation. Benito Mussolini's Italy struggled with sustaining an industrialized war economy, reflected in the subpar equipment the Italian armed forces depended on during World War II. Fascist governments, including Italy's, often prioritized short-term achievements, such as state-funded projects, at the expense of long-term prosperity. Central to Italy's problems was its weak private sector, replaced by an inefficient state-run economy. Despite these issues, Mussolini's main concern was consolidating and displaying his power. His propaganda painted a picture of fascism as the remedy Italy needed, promising both order and prosperity. Yet, external pressures like the Great Depression and the looming war exposed Italy's underlying fragility. Italy's appearance of strength mirrored Mussolini's own facade. Though some Italians resisted Mussolini's rule with multiple assassination attempts in the late 1920s, by the 1930s, the Fascist Party had nearly quelled all opposition. Mussolini's dominance over Italian media showcased his grip on power, scrutinizing newspapers daily and dictating what could be published. His unbridled control bolstered Mussolini's ego, leading him to view himself as a Caesar-like figure destined to elevate Italy on the global stage. During this era, Mussolini became a beacon for European far-right parties. Adolf Hitler, in particular, drew inspiration from Mussolini's methods. The Nazis even modeled their tactics on Italy's fascist party, especially in suppressing opposition and manipulating media. However, Mussolini maintained a complicated relationship with Hitler. While he initially dismissed the Nazis, their rise to power forced Mussolini to engage diplomatically. Hitler's 1933 state visit to Italy highlighted their uneasy dynamic. Despite Mussolini's fluency in German bridging some gaps, he privately viewed Hitler as paranoid and unreliable. This was further strained when Hitler-backed supporters assassinated Mussolini's Austrian ally, Engelbert Dollfuss, in 1934. The event brought the two countries to the brink of conflict, but they ultimately avoided war. Throughout the years, Mussolini aimed to foster relationships with many nations, even as he oscillated between praising and critiquing Hitler. He assured France and Britain of his support against Nazi Germany, while often disparaging Hitler behind closed doors. Benito Mussolini's early strategies seemed poised to keep Italy on the safer side of potential European conflicts, but these decisions led to eventual alliances that placed Italy on the losing side of history. Proudly wearing the title of founder of the empire since the 1920s, Mussolini's empire consisted mainly of Libya, Eritrea, and Somalia. His desire for a larger empire and resources led to the invasion of Ethiopia in 1935. Despite Italy's eventual victory in Ethiopia, the conquest revealed the vulnerabilities of the Italian military. Misled by his perception of the strength of the Italian forces and his own leadership capabilities, Mussolini embarked on diplomatic visits to Germany. However, his encounter with Adolf Hitler revealed the stark contrast in the powers of their nations. Germany's infrastructure, organization, and military far outshone Italy's. Under the increasing influence of Nazi Germany, Mussolini started to adopt anti-Semitic policies at home, mirroring those of the Third Reich. The evident shift in power dynamics made Mussolini even more inclined to align with Hitler, whom he perceived as stronger than the Western Allies. This alignment culminated in the Munich Agreement of 1938, where Germany, Italy, France, and Britain agreed to cede the Sudetenland areas of Czechoslovakia to Germany in a bid for peace. The agreement was initially celebrated as a diplomatic success, but Germany's subsequent annexation of the remainder of Czechoslovakia exposed the hollow promises. This act set Europe on a path to the Second World War. Emboldened by Hitler's successes, Benito Mussolini ordered Italian forces to invade Albania in April 1939. This rapid victory marked Italy as Germany's true diplomatic and military ally. The alliance was formalized when Mussolini and Hitler signed the Pact of Steel Treaty on May 22, 1939, binding Italy's fate with Germany. Mussolini gambled on Hitler's triumph in any future war. However, despite the grand title of the Pact of Steel, the treaty was skewed. Mussolini only intended to commit Italian armies against the Western Allies when he was certain of victory. This hesitation stemmed from Italy's ill-preparedness for a prolonged conflict and Mussolini's hope that Hitler would postpone major confrontations. But Hitler had his plans. After sealing a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union on August 23, 1939, he initiated the invasion of Poland on September 1st. This led Britain and France to declare war on Germany. Mussolini, observing Hitler's success in Poland, chose to bide his time. When Hitler swiftly advanced across France in 1940, Mussolini felt Italy might be overshadowed by Germany. Even with Italy's military unpreparedness, Mussolini declared war on the Allies on June 10, 1940. On May 29th, prior to this, Mussolini had persuaded King Victor Emmanuel to relinquish his authority over Italy's armed forces. By June 11th, Mussolini was named Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces. Following France's surrender on June 22, 1940, Mussolini anticipated Britain's defeat. Yet, Britain successfully evacuated over 300,000 troops from Dunkirk, bolstering its defenses and those of its empire. The strategic Suez Canal in Egypt was particularly vital, being the primary route to Britain's Asian territories and a key passage to Middle Eastern oil. Realizing the significance of the canal and spurred by dreams of a reborn Roman Empire and the Mediterranean as an Italian lake, Mussolini saw an opportunity. With France neutralized and Britain weakened, Mussolini believed it was time to act. He ordered the Italian 10th Army to invade Egypt from Libya on September 9th and 10, 1940, marching towards Alexandria and Cairo. Despite early victories, Benito Mussolini's Italian forces suffered a major setback during Operation Compass when they were repelled by British forces under Archibald Wavell. This devastating loss dashed Mussolini's dreams of reviving the Roman Empire, costing him approximately 150,000 troops. As the conflict unfolded, entire Italian divisions often surrendered to the British en masse. Many of these soldiers were unwilling conscripts with little zeal for Mussolini's ambitions. This trend continued in various theaters, from North Africa to Russia and Italy itself. Mussolini's troops lacked the motivation, equipment, and training seen in Hitler's forces. Mussolini's miscalculations had repercussions for Germany too. They had to bolster their weaker allies, transforming them from assets to liabilities in the larger scope of World War II. The North African campaign, commonly attributed to skilled commanders like Erwin Rommel and Bernard Montgomery, was largely influenced by the battle for aerial and naval supremacy. At the war's onset, Italy had a formidable fleet designed to safeguard supply routes to North Africa and challenge the British Royal Navy's dominance in the Mediterranean. The Italian fleet, boasting modern warships, significantly outnumbered the British Mediterranean fleet. To counter this advantage, the British turned to their ace card, Admiral Andrew Brown Cunningham. He recognized the need to neutralize the Italian Navy swiftly. Thus, he masterminded an audacious assault on the Italian naval base at Taranto on November 11 and 12, 1940, using 21 antiquated swordfish torpedo bombers. This raid crippled the Italian fleet, sinking one battleship and heavily damaging two others. By the time Hitler realized the limitations of Mussolini's Italy as an ally, he was forced to intervene. Determined to address Italy's shortcomings in Greece and North Africa, he dispatched the famed Africa Corps under Erwin Rommel to North Africa and more troops to safeguard Greece. Rommel wreaked havoc, relegating Italy to the background until his Africa Corps faced defeat at El Alamein in 1942. The Allies capitalized on this, capturing North Africa and setting their sights on Italy, particularly Sicily, launching Operation Husky in 1943. Mussolini's health and control were waning. Italy's fascist Grand Council voted him out in 1943, and King Victor Emmanuel informed him that the war was lost. But the plot thickened. After Mussolini's arrest, Hitler occupied Italy to counter the Allies and, showcasing his lingering loyalty, rescued Mussolini in the audacious Gran Sasso raid in September 1943. But Mussolini was merely a puppet now, relegated to leading a Nazi-backed state in northern Italy as the country fractured in two. The fall of Rome in June 1944 marked a grim trajectory for Mussolini, who was kept under constant watch by the SS. As the Allies ploughed through Europe, Mussolini attempted to flee to Switzerland, but was captured and executed alongside his mistress, Clara Petacci, in 1945. Their bodies were displayed in Milan, marking the tragic end of a former schoolteacher who founded fascism, built a totalitarian state, and, in his hubris, gambled Italy's future on a doomed alliance. Despite his grave missteps, Mussolini's intentions and personality remain debated. But both he and Hitler's shared arrogance led to their eventual downfalls in 1945, leaving fascism defeated and discarded. Thank you for joining us on this historical journey. If you found it insightful, please like and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories from the past.